Incredible music news out of Los Angeles. This past weekend at Dodgers Stadium, the final two surviving members of the Beatles, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr, performed together on stage. And this is the first time that they've performed together in about half a century, if not more. So this is, of course, an explosive moment, not only for the world of music, not only, for Beatles fans, but simply for pop culture in general. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and preach the importance of the Beatles. That's one thing that I don't think needs to be done. Obviously, they have a legacy that speaks for itself. And one of the things that I love the most about the Beatles is that when you see people, even today at an event like this, or even when Paul McCartney's just by himself solo, the reaction that people have to the Beatles is that childlike wonder, that childlike happiness, and just really saying wow, almost like there's a superhero in front of them. And there's very few things that actually produce that result. I keep thinking how incredible this must have been for the band that was playing with them, playing, literally looking around and, being that these are the last surviving guys saying, okay, I'm playing with the Beatles. I don't think all of them were equally as starstruck. There was a legend there on stage with Paul and Ringo that sort of got lost in the mix, actually. I sort of feel bad for him. Joe Walsh of the Eagles, of course, iconic, but sort of just the wow factor in the headline of Paul and Ringo back together has sort of left him overshadowed here. But I believe that he actually even leaked the fact that they were going to be there backstage before the show on Twitter. I believe he posted this, or somebody posted this photo of them. So very cool to have these legends all together. I think that this is, again, obviously an amazing moment for music, an amazing moment for pop culture. And for the younger fans such as myself who never got the chance to even see John Lennon solo, let alone the Beatles, this is a fantastic experience. And to see Ringo behind the drums is cool. I'm not sure how much stuff he does behind the drums now, but I know that most of his solo stuff in recent years has been singing. Great to see them get into it and get into some straight ahead meat and potatoes rock and roll. And picking up with the Sgt. Pepper's reprise was sort of like they just walked out on stage and, okay, boys, let's pick up where we left off. They just jumped into that. So magical feeling all around. Great night for music. Great night for the Beatles. In not so great news for rock and roll, Sharon Osbourne is back at it again. Yes, she is. Sharon, I've found she always has an interesting comment. In every interview that she does, ends up breaking off and becoming a headline in its own right with a whole different story. And this time, Sharon is taking shots at one of Ozzy Osbourne's former bandmates, of which there are many. Ozzy's gone through many lineup changes throughout the years, and many different studio and session musicians as well. And it isn't always pretty with these musicians. This time, Sharon is taking aim at Bob Daisley, of course, former bassist for Ozzy Osbourne, participating in some of his most acclaimed projects, such as Diary of a Madman. Sharon gave this interview to CelebrityAccess.com, and she was asked if Ozzy was trying to put together some type of band. The question reads, when Ozzy and you gathered the musicians to play with him, was it intended as a band project? Now, I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to mean. There isn't further context on that earlier in the interview. But her response took aim at Bob Daisley, and she says, never, never, never. The bass player, Bob Daisley, has said that over the years. He's a sad old fuck that played on two of the greatest albums in the genre, and he can't get over the fact that we didn't use him further. Like it was goodbye, see ya. And he's never gotten over it. And several lawsuits later, he tried to sue us 3 times, each time thrown out of court 3 times. He's tried to change history, and it just won't fit. It was never a band. There's no way. It was Ozzy Osbourne. So essentially, I guess there is the context in the end of it is that Sharon wasn't wanting this project to be a band effort. Sharon was wanting this project to be a solo artist with a backing track. And if you were a part of the musical team, you were essentially a part of that backing track. So there wasn't context on it before, but as I read through the question, I saw the context. I didn't want to spoil my initial reaction to the full response before making this video. So I understand what she's trying to say, although I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. I like the approach. I don't want to say that it's wrong. Again, I've done commentaries on Sharon before. She's a very smart businesswoman, and I'm very confident that she knows what she's doing. However, I tend to prefer the approach that, say, Alice Cooper took. The Alice Cooper Band, and that's not what it's called. Many people call it that. I happen to be one of them because I'm sort of a fan of the more original lineup. Alice Cooper was always billed as a band, and he ended up changing it throughout the years. I'll give him that. But it's always been, in the beginning, it was Alice Cooper, the guys in the group, and that was the emphasis. Same thing with sort of Marilyn Manson, although Marilyn Manson was more so on the solo side. But, there were with these groups, even though it always has to be more so on the main person, there's always some sort of recognition and a level of recognition. Maybe Marilyn Manson's a bad example, but a level of recognition to the other musicians. So in that regard, it's different. But again, I'm not going to say that it's wrong. But then the interview goes on a little bit further. It says, the interviewer said, "You got your revenge on Bob Daisley. He and the drummer were both fired by you in the summer of 1981, and their names and contributions were later erased from those first two albums. The tracks were re-recorded with new players." And Sharon responds, "Yes, just to teach him a lesson." So they literally went through the trouble, Sharon, I guess, and her team, to find new musicians to come in and scrub the recordings of these guys that they had a problem with, and then re-record them with new people on the same songs, which, petty. I think petty is the right word for it. Again, I'm confident that Sharon knows what she's doing. She was probably trying to find a way to use the songs and keep the royalties or get more royalties and make it that way. As a matter of fact, Kiss has done that now. Well, not now. They did it 10 years ago almost. Wow, how the time flies. In 2009, they released a CD called The Best. It was sort of Greatest Kiss or Best Kiss, something like that. And in the CD, it was all of Kiss's greatest hit songs re-recorded with their new people, their new guitarist and drummer. And now if you ever see a Kiss commercial that's come out in the past 10 years, and I want you guys to pay attention and listen closely if you're not like a Kiss purist, next time you see Kiss in a movie or hear Kiss's music in any sort of advertisement or TV, that's a re-recording of the new Kiss. And why is that? It's so that they don't have to pay the old guys royalties. They can have the royalties allotted to where they want them sent, and they don't have to pay someone that they could potentially even have a problem with. So interesting how that works. So, I'm saying that to try and help play devil's advocate. Sharon isn't necessarily being awful, even though she says, the interviewer says, "You're a mean bitch, aren't you?" She says, "I am. It's true, I am." And yeah, it is mean and maybe a bit bitchy. And also, final thing I want to add to this, when you read something in text, it always seems worse. It always reads worse, especially something like this. He's a sad old fuck that played on two of the greatest albums. That reads really poorly, but then again, we all know the Osbournes. We all know people from Birmingham and different parts of the UK. They cuss a lot. It's in their vernacular. And they're also more liberal with their cuss words, and it doesn't have the same sting and the same weight that it carries here in North America. So I think that has to be accounted for as well as the business practices. There are some big and distinct differences there.